being here today. We just want to make a couple of comments quickly on some of the things that Governor Walz has been saying lately. His comments regarding Republicans as Nazis and fascists who are stealing our country is a reference to Republicans winning election, and this is just outrageous. This is Republicans winning elections. What an insulting statement to millions of Americans and many, many Minnesotans. Using divisive language like this and comparing political opponents to one of the most horrifying and tragic periods in world history is out of line, and he owes the public an apology. Political disagreement and rhetorical flourishment is something that's pretty common in politics, right? And that's not what happened in this clip. Governor Walz used evocative language comparing modern political opponents to a political party responsible for the murder of millions of people, including 6 million Jews. It is out of line and warrants an apology. This isn't about President Trump, and it isn't about the budget in Washington, D.C. This is about language that Governor Walz used, and it is wrong, and it cannot be used again. Beyond the words used by Governor Walz, this is a pattern that's reoccurring through his administration. It has been revealed that the Department of Budget and Management has been using training programs for state employee staff that refers to Republicans as, quote, white supremacists and holding a, quote, autocratic agenda. This is a pattern from the governor. This needs to be addressed. We have a lot of work to do this year, and this is unhelpful in our efforts to be working together, figuring out a path forward, working in a bipartisan manner. How can we be doing that when we have a governor who is undercutting us and calling us names like Nazis and fascists as we're trying to get this process done? I'm going to turn this over to Senator Coleman for some further comments.
Thank you. I got to tell you, when I watched that clip, my blood boiled. As a mother to Jewish children who has spent her entire career in the Senate calling out and fighting anti-Semitism and standing up for Israel, I take the weight of Governor Walz's words incredibly seriously. At a time when anti-Semitism is on the rise, we should be focusing on unity and understanding, not reckless comparisons that diminish historical atrocities. I urge Governor Walz to consider the real-world impact of his words and to engage in a dialogue that fosters respect rather than division. Governor Walz himself, when compared by Governor candidate Jensen, said the community itself simply said stop, and a simple apology and moving on would have moved us on to other things. But now it's apparent that this is not a slip of the tongue. This is not a random issue. This is an arrogance of dismissing people who know and understanding that the governor's rhetoric has immense impact on the citizens of Minnesota. Those were Tim Walz's own words, and you can believe when Governor candidate Jensen said the same thing, he got a call from the Coleman family explaining why calling someone a Nazi is incredibly insensitive. The media covered this extensively when a Republican did it. Republicans have been made to apologize, and we are asking for the exact same treatment when the Democratic governor of Minnesota uses such reckless language.
So we're open for questions. However, I think clearly the questions fall in the governor's lap on this one, but happy to take anything.
Did Scott Jensen ever apologize? I don't recall that he did. In fact, he said, "You don't get to be my thought police." I don't know. I don't recall how that all.
I don't recall, but what we're asking for from the governor is apology at this point. That's the type of rhetoric that's going to really blow apart what we've been working for over a month now on trying to build these bipartisan bridges. That's difficult to overcome.
Speaking of that, how would this affect things? Committee today, I don't know if you heard about Senate Finance Committee, detailed Governor Walz's commissioners detailed billions of dollars that the state is going to lose, and Democrats were saying, I don't know that we're going to be able to balance the budget in light of what DC is doing.
Again, I mean, Mary, we could talk about that. That reconciliation process is going on in DC, and I'm sure they're going to go through that process and find waste, fraud, and abuse. We're going to let them do that work. I wish Governor Walz would be more focused on waste, fraud, and abuse in Minnesota like that. I think Minnesotans can get behind that. This distracts from that work. When we start calling each other names, when we sit down in those rooms and try to hash this out, If I know that that's what you think I am and we're sitting in a room, a Nazi and a fascist, it's hard to build a relationship off of that.
Whether it was candidate Jensen or there have been other Republicans statewide, federal, that have compared COVID policies to Nazism. Does your side have any blame in terms of this rhetoric as well?
Well, clearly, the governor has been talking that when he was running for VP, he made the same comments, similar comments. This is a continuing pattern within his administration. Also flowed into the training itself from MMB, and we don't know what other agencies will be looking into that as well, calling out Republicans for that. So it's the height of hypocrisy if he's been calling Republicans out, and yet he can go out and do that without any sort of pointing out from our side that that's happening. We expect the same response.
To piggyback off that, I mean, doesn't this problem cut both ways? Which is to say that politics has gotten to a boiling point where the rhetoric, no matter if you are a D or an R, is name-calling, debasement of people, casting aspersions on their motives. I mean, hasn't that been the case for the last couple of years, and doesn't it cut both ways?
Caroline, that's what we wanted. We're doing a reset this year. You saw in the power sharing agreement that we had at the Senate, what a great opportunity to reset the political dialogue in this state. The House, they're doing a little bit different approach, but at the same time, I think between their leadership too, you saw very respectful rhetoric between those leaders. And so that's the tone that I was really hoping that we would be seeing throughout this session. This was just an unnecessary error, and now he's calling us out on this. So this is not just a one-time issue. This continues to happen through his administration and through him personally.
And if I may, really quickly, I think everybody is responsible for their own rhetoric. And so you'll notice I take that incredibly seriously. I don't say Democrats are doing something bad. I'll say this Democrat's idea is bad. And so to give him a pass because all of the rhetoric in the country is getting heightened is absolutely unacceptable. What he said was unacceptable, and I would hope that the media here will hold him accountable.
On the training document, so MMB has said they stopped using it after it was brought to their attention. Have you asked any other agencies if they have used this document or something similar, and if you heard back?
This is relatively,
Jim Nash in the House is,
this is relatively new.
I think we're getting an effort like that going.
Yeah, if you see within even the statement that they put out, they've been using it through February 2025. Well, it's February 2025, so they're continuing, or up to recently, continuing to use that.
Back to the Nazi thing, are you just amazed that people in both parties continue to compare people to Nazis and Hitler? That the rule of thumb has always been, unless you're a Nazi, an actual Nazi or Hitler, don't call someone that. Yet people say these things all the time, Republicans and Democrats. Does that amaze you this day and age?
Yeah, absolutely. Norm had relatives that died in the Holocaust. And he has nephews and nieces that live out in New York that show no indication of being Jewish because they're scared of what's going to happen to them, whose children have to go to schools with armed security guards because of the anti-Semitism going on. But we have never seen something to that height of what the horror that Jews faced during World War II under Nazi regimes. And so to compare somebody that you don't like what they're doing to a Nazi is so offensive to every single person and their families that suffered that. And it really takes away from the seriousness of that. So I agree, Tom. I don't want to hear anybody on either side of the aisle use that rhetoric unless we actually see something that horrible going on, God forbid.
Can someone speak to when this clip, when he said these comments, I saw you guys linked the clip and it didn't say like where and in what context. It was just that snippet and it, again, we don't know where he said it, so I'm curious if you guys can share more about that.
Sure. I believe that the coverage said that he spoke at a nurses event, and Rachel has the clip to send around as well with more information.
Tuesday morning at an MNA event. He met with them on Tuesday morning from the public calendar, from my understanding, and we received it from someone who was at that meeting.
Yeah,
And it was
closed
audio,
to
it was
the
audio,
press.
it was audio only. Okay.
It was at the Capitol?
I don't know where it was. That's a great question for Governor Walz.
It was closed to the press, I remember that, on his, like many of his things are these days.
You talked a little bit about the overall relationships and meeting with the progress to have bipartisan reset. There haven't been very many public meetings on the calendar so far with the governor and legislative leaders. Are you two talking? Has he met with you? Are you talking on a somewhat regular basis, or no, or?
It's been very difficult to communicate with the governor. I have not had an open line of communication with him. I've sent some text messages hoping to talk about this exact issue, hoping that that will still happen here at some point in the near future. But no, it's been a very difficult line of communication with the governor.
He's gonna talk today about health insurance and making health insurance companies pay their fair share, essentially taxing them to pay for what would be reinsurance. Do you have a position on that?
You know, today, what we wanted to focus on was the comments the governor made. We can get back to you on that here after.
We'll have a response ready for that.
Yeah,
I
after-
suspect we don't need more.
Because he's gonna talk about that and the Nazi thing coming up at 2, so
Sure.
you could just respond to it now.
Well, we haven't seen his, I haven't seen his plan. Do you have it? He hasn't shared it with us, so I don't.
I know the outline of it, yes.
Okay, I don't.
I mean, in general, though, I feel like it's been bipartisan in the past, the concept of reinsurance, maybe the mechanism by which you get that money to
Sure.
ensure,
If
to ensure
we're
that
talking
those
about the
rates are
concept
yeah.
of it, I think in the current system, the way that it's structured, reinsurance does, you know, the effective thing in making sure the rates are at least reasonable for most Minnesotans that are accessing that market, in the private market like that. And so we're gonna have to see what the outlines are. I know there's a number of different scenarios going forward here. Our lead, Senator Dames, has been working very hard on that and trying to find a solution going forward. But at least there's movement in that direction again. I think that's the proper way of doing it this time around.
But I imagine you would be opposed generally to a tax on health insurers to pay for that.
Well, currently, we do have a tax of 1.75% on that, and so what we're gonna be looking at, you know, is some different avenues. However, we are not, any new taxes, absolutely not.
Could you respond to the news out of the other chamber? Speaker Damas named Woman of the Year from USA Today for Minnesota. Had you heard that?
Breaking news, way to go. I can't imagine anybody that deserves it more in Minnesota than Speaker Damas for what she has been through these last few months, trying to get the House organized. That's great news. So thanks for sharing that, Mary.
Do you think there's a bigger platform and a bigger job for her?
Well, it sure seems like it. You know, Woman of the Year this year, and maybe President in a few years, so we'll see.
Senator Coleman?
I know you guys don't like to talk necessarily about what the other chamber is doing, but I'm curious, because now they have the advantage right now and they can bring bills that are Republican priorities to the floor. You guys can't do the same thing, being in the minority in your chamber. Are you happy that they can do that, at least if they don't have 68 votes to pass, that those issues can get more attention and obviously committee hearings that maybe, I know you guys have lamented you haven't had before, or at least in the, I should say, the last 2 years of the trifecta?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, finally, after 2 years of being completely shut out of discussions, as the Democrats spend $19 billion of surplus, raise taxes by $10 billion, as they put mandates on our schools and small businesses across this state, finally Republicans have the opportunity, because we were elected to those positions, and now House Republicans have the ability to hear the bills that a lot of Minnesotans were asking for. And so this has really changed the rhetoric around here. We've got an opportunity again to have more bipartisanship in a way that reflects Minnesotans' values, not just the Twin Cities activists, but across the state. And so for us, this has really been a refreshing year and something that I've been incredibly excited for up until these comments by the governor were made.
Trump's been back in office for about a month now. His rhetoric, you feeling good about how he's presenting himself as the head of your party?
I think that what Donald Trump has been doing has been showing that you can work across the aisle. If you look at his cabinet picks, we have Tulsi Gabbard up there. We have people who are from all walks of life and all different political backgrounds and ideologies. We've got a Kennedy in the cabinet. He's shown that he cares about good ideas. Doesn't matter which side of the aisle they come from. And so I think that in the second term, we have certainly seen a rhetoric that people are supporting. Polls are showing it, that he's getting behind. We're seeing momentum, we're seeing action. And I think that that is something I'd like to continue seeing.
So you're saying he's showing bipartisanship because Tulsi Gabbard and RFK Jr. are part of his cabinet?
Absolutely. I think it's one of the most diverse cabinets we've ever seen as far as thought and party background and all of that as well.
Some members of your caucus have raised concerns about the potential Medicaid cuts and I just think someone already asked about this a little bit, but can you address that again? Like, are you concerned about the impact on the state budget?
So they're starting their reconciliation process over in the US House, and so we'll be looking at how that's gonna be impacting the state, but I think in reality, what they're looking for are areas where there's waste, fraud, and abuse. And again, that's exactly what we're asking for in this state as well. When you see $500 million going out in waste, fraud, and abuse here, and that's just what we could calculate, I think Minnesotans and Americans in general are expecting that money that they send to the government is used in an effective way. I don't see a problem with us taking a look at that right now.
I guess how much should you all be taking into consideration federal changes coming down the pipe? As you build how much is that weighing on you as you're building the budget here?
So right now, Democrats have put us in a position that 2 years out, we're gonna be $5.1 billion at least in the deficit. And so we are trying to address what Democrats in this state have done, even though they've raised taxes by $10 billion. We are in a real situation now where we've gotta make sure that our budgets are taken care of here. There are gonna be some variables going forward. It'll make the picture a little bit more dynamic. But we've got a lot to work on right here in Minnesota, and that's really what we've been focused on.
Great, anything else?
Great, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you guys.